Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's Farminar, first of our winter Farminar series. I'm Steve Carlson. I'm a staff member at Practical Farmers of Iowa, and I'll be kind of the host for tonight. And as you probably know, tonight's topic is mobile poultry processing, and we're glad to have Amber Schulte here to discuss her new business, Schwell Chicks. And joining Amber is her brother Travis, who will be raising chickens this year, and he's got some questions for Amber about how the business works that should be helpful for the rest of us. But before I turn it over to Amber and Travis, I'm going to speak a little bit about Practical Farmers of Iowa and a little bit about our Farminar series. So we do these every Tuesday night. From here, it looks like we've got about 10 more topics that we're starting off with tonight. They're all on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. except near the end of our series here, you can see those two on March 10th and on March 17th. Those are Fridays, and we're going to do those as a two-part series on perennial crops at noon on those 2 days. But you can find on our website a full description of all these topics, all of our presenter names. It's too much information for this slide here, so check out our website for that information. Also, we record all of these and put them in our archives, so if you miss one, check out the website and you can watch the recording and share it with some friends. So Practical Farmers of Iowa has been around for about 30 years, just over 30 years. We're a nonprofit organization made up of farmers, and we started back in the 80s during the farm crisis by a group of members who were interested in reducing inputs during that time. And today we're still focused on a lot of the same kinds of issues that we were in 1985, but we're now made up of farmers from all enterprises and farms from all sizes. And we also have a large group of friends of farmers who support our mission and are members in our organization. And speaking of the mission, our mission is strengthening farms and communities through farmer-led investigation and information sharing. And this mission allows us to help farmers practice an agriculture that benefits both the land and the people. Our values at PFI are welcoming everyone, creativity, collaboration, and community, viable farms now and for future generations, and stewardship and ecology. As a member-based organization, I want to encourage you to consider joining us. There are various membership levels that you can look into. Again, there's a lot more information on our website, but as a member, you get to tap into our network of other members, which is really the main benefit, is learning from each other. As a member-driven organization, our network is what makes Practical Farmers so strong. But also as a member, you would get access to our super insightful email discussion lists. We have discussion lists strictly for cover crops or livestock or row crops or horticulture. A handful of those discussion lists you can check out on the website. You also get access to our newsletters, discounts to our events. You get to participate in our programming like research projects and beginning farmer programs. So think about joining PFI if you like our Farminars. Another thing on our website is our event calendar, which this time of year there still is a lot of learning activities and learning events going on. So check our events for anything that might be coming up in your area. And this week is a big week for Practical Farmers of Iowa. This is our annual conference held in Ames this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we have all of that information at the link at the bottom of the screen there, practicalfarmers.org. We've got over 50 sessions planned throughout the weekend, tons of workshops for farmers of all skill levels, and in all enterprises. So definitely look up information on that website and plan to be in Ames this weekend to join us. It's really a fantastic event. So a couple rules real quick. Feel free to ask any questions in that chat box as our presenters are going. Go ahead and ask any clarifying questions, but while they're speaking, I guess try and keep it a little bit on topic, because once they're done, we try and reserve at least 30 minutes near the end of our time period tonight for all other questions that we maybe didn't cover during the presentation. So be thinking of those questions as we go. Type them in the chat box when they're appropriate. Like I said in the chat box there, if you want to stay in touch with PFI's Farminars, please provide us your email address. And it's always fun to see where folks are tuning in from, so go ahead and put your location in the chat box too, just to see where everybody's at. Also, some of you have noticed on the very bottom left corner of your screen is a little poll. We just try to keep a head count of who is watching these Farminars. So if there's a couple of you sitting watching together, check that. Check the appropriate box in that poll in the lower left corner about how many people are watching with you. And then finally, near the end of the presentation, I'm going to put a link on the screen that takes you to a very short survey about the Farminar. So please take a quick minute after the presentation to give us some feedback and to suggest topics that you want to hear in the future. And again, we will record this, and so it'll be on our website shortly if you want to rewatch it or share it with some friends. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Amber and Travis's presentation and let those two take it away. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight.
All right, everybody, this is Amber with Schwell Chicks. A little bit of back history. Grew up on our family dairy farm. We raised chickens growing up. We typically had just enough for the family. We did them all by hand, I would like to say, back in the day. So handling chickens has been something that I've been around since I was little. The first year that Mary and I purchased chickens, we did 2 batches of 100. I made Mary do them by hand so she could appreciate having the plucker. So she knew how to appreciate the equipment that we have. This last year we did 225 chickens. We raised and butchered them and did them for sale as whole chickens. We did those out of our garage processing, and we are lucky enough to have our family close by to raise the chickens on their farms. So that's a little bit of the backing of my history with chickens.
This is Travis. So as Amber said, grew up on a dairy farm. I left for a while after high school, union electrician. My wife and I bought a farm in 2014. I have a small cow herd of my own. I custom graze cow-calf pairs, and looking to get into chickens, add a little bit more diversity and a little bit more to my bottom line. Luckily, my sister just lives down the road. I did not like the butchering aspect of it, but I don't mind raising them. So kind of a joint venture we're getting into, and we'll see how it goes, but it should be well.
So to get started here, we just went through a couple of the basic things, how we are set up. So why we started our mobile unit is we really wanted to get out there and go to everyone's farm and give them a more personalized service. There are just a handful of local processors in the area. There is actually only one I know of right now over in Story City. They are set up as a custom processor. So they're able to handle the larger amounts that we're not able to. And I have used him previously to get people to him if we are not able to accommodate their needs. One of the biggest things that I've noticed is the knowledge of processing. A lot of people kind of come in blind to chickens. They think it is something fun to do, and they don't really think it through before they get their chickens. So they buy these chickens, and then they are kind of at a scramble last minute to figure out where they're going to get them processed. So improving the local knowledge is something that, we get out there in the head start of things to make sure that people are aware that they need to set up a processing date before they actually order these chickens. So one of the things that when I talk to people on the phone is we have to make sure that they have certain things that we need when we go to their site. So we run under the exemption for Iowa. So when we go to someone's site, so when we go to Travis's place, what he has to have for us is running water, and it can't be out of a gravity tank. We have had a couple of people who have had gravity tanks for us, and it's just not the best situation for us. So we have to have hydrant water or water from the house that we are able to use. Our plucker, we need to be able to hook up to electric. So that's really the only thing we need is just a basic 110 outlet to plug into. The other thing that we do is we are not able to take the waste with us. That would be the feathers and guts and blood. So what we do on that is we ask the people that we're butchering to use the waste in a proactive manner. So what we do is we tell them to take the blood and put it on their gardens, on any new trees that they've planted because of the extra nitrogen that's in the blood. So we only process April through September. We can be a little bit pickier since we are a mobile unit. We only do April through September because, well, the weather's a little bit nicer. So once you get past September, there's a little bit too many pin feathers for my liking. So the one thing that we have ran into, obviously, during these times is that there's inclement weather. So what we do is when I talk to our customers on the phone is I make sure that if there is bad weather, we are able to get inside or underneath something just to keep us out of the rain. So what we are seeing this year and last year was a lot of new people coming into their first year of raising chickens. So a lot of times there are, like I had said previously, there's people who go out and just buy the chicks because they see them at a local store and they just kind of jump in. But this past year, I had probably 5 people that I talked to from beginning to end, and they were asking the right questions on how to raise their poultry the right way to get the most out of what they've bought. So I just go over basic feeding routines, water, and to make sure that they've got the right environment. If they're going to have them inside, make sure they have proper airflow. So one of the things that Mary and I thoroughly enjoy is teaching our customers how to actually do this themselves. So kind of one of the things that we had to step back and think about was, well, why would we do that? Well, we had to make sure that it was one of our goals that we would accomplish is having people be more independent. So if we are able to teach people to butcher their own chickens, that means they can be more independent with other things that they are able to do on their farm. So I would have to say my favorite part is going to farms where there are kids. So at first, their initial reaction to the process that we do, they're very hesitant to watch. So we don't push on them to come and watch, but sometimes the parents encourage them to come down. So what we will do is we'll actually have the kids jump in and go through every station with us. So Mary starts on the kill station. The kids are there. Mary walks them through how we go through our stages, and then they're over with me on the scolding, gutting, and then the gutting, essentially. And that's typically ends up being their favorite part. So there's 2 different exemptions that you can butcher chickens under for Iowa. Every state is different with the exemptions that you can do. So the one that we process under, it's a custom exemption. So since we are mobile, we are not licensed. So we are able to do essentially 1,000 birds at every site. We say 999 just to make sure that our records are clear so that we don't go over the maximum number that we're able to do per site. So one of our issues that we have when we talk to customers on the phone is they want to sell birds that they've raised. Well, part of us being mobile is that the birds can only be used for farm use. So if we come to a location and you've got 40 birds on site, we are going to process those birds for you. You cannot take those birds and resell them to neighbors or family or somebody else at work. So that's one of the things that we kind of have issues with. After talking to the state office before we started, one of the things that they advised us to do was to make sure that we have on our receipts is that the birds are not for resale. So that is something that I talked to them up front about. And then again at the end, when we're done, we have them sign the receipt saying that they are not going to resell the animals. So we're our own inspectors. So there has been probably 2 or 3 times that we've gone to a location where the conditions of the birds is not what we would like to see. There have been some that we have not butchered because of the condition of them. So if there is someone who is adamant about us butchering for them once we're on site, we can go ahead and dispose of the birds for them, meaning that we will just kill them. We will not do any further processing with them. One of the questions that we've had as well is if the bird has a broken wing or a broken leg, we'll inspect the rest of the bird to make sure that the meat is of quality. If it's not, I will simply just put it in our discard bucket and make sure that that's disposed of so they can't take that bird. So our pricing is pretty easy. I called around just to a couple different processors in nearby states and the other one in Story City just to get an average pricing. So our prices are $275 per bird. Since we do have to set up and tear down every time we go to a location, we do have a $20 setup fee. So to help cover our costs with travel, we're at 60 cents a mile round trip. Livers, gizzards, hearts, these take extra time to make sure that the livers aren't torn up. We have to clean the gizzards, and we have to cut the fat off the hearts. So we charge an extra 50 cents on those just because it does take us extra time. We probably could charge more on that, but we don't want to see a lot of the bird go to waste. So we do like when people keep those. Typically, we like to leave them whole, but there are a lot of people out there who don't know how to use a whole chicken anymore, unfortunately. So we do offer to piece them out for them. A lot of people do take advantage of that. It does slow us down. And again, we could charge more on that, but it's something that we want to be able to offer. And one of the things that I do take a lot of time on at every site is making sure that I show them how to piece the birds out themselves, again, to make them more independent and self-efficient. So this year, one of the things that we're going to be implementing is any bird over 7 pounds is going to be an extra charge of $1 per pound of weight. The reason for that is we're a 2-man show. So when Mary and I show up to a site and we've got 60 10-pound birds, we can only process 2 at a time with our equipment. They don't pluck as nice, and it's harder for us to use our kill cones because of the size of them. So that really slows us down when they're over 7 pounds. So one of the things that we like to make sure of and that we're proud of is the presentation of the birds when we're done. We like them to look nice. We don't want their skin all torn up. So that's another reason. If they're at 7 pounds or under, you're going to have a nice looking bird. So everything that we've done pretty much so far has been by word of mouth. It's kind of interesting to see how fast word gets around of a new mobile unit coming to your site. Let me backtrack here a minute. One of the reasons that we decided to do a mobile unit as well is if we come to your location, it's going to be less stress on those animals. So there's a stress hormone that the animals release when they go through a slaughtering process. So the way that we are set up and the way that we process, we're able to reduce the stress on the birds so they actually have a better flavor. So Mary and I do have a website. We do have a website that we have been trying to keep up to date, and we will get that back up in here within the next week or so with some more information. But we just typically put a couple flyers up. I've got one flyer up at the local meat shop in Newhall. But other than that, I mean, we really haven't spread the word too much any other way. We've had a lot of returning customers because of the service that we provide. It's very one-on-one. We make sure that we take the time from start to finish and that we do a good job every single time. So there are some people that call and kind of turn up their nose to our price. But after talking to them about the round trip that they would make to a local processor, it actually saves them time to have us come to them.
Well, Amber, how are you? How are you and Mary contacted for processing?
So on the website and the flyers, all of our appointments are set up over the phone, and that's when we go through a lot of the information that we have talked about.
How many can you process in a day?
So again, it's just Mary and myself. The most that we have done in one day is 70, and that was a very long day. The number that we like to stay around is 40 to 50. If there are more birds, what we ask is that people call ahead of time. And I'm going to kind of lump two of these questions here together, is how far in advance people need to call to set up a processing date. If you're going to do a large number, a large batch, I should say, of 100 plus, we need to have a good time in front of that to make sure that we can find some help to have us set up a processing date for you. I do have a couple of options for people who will help us, but again, it takes a lot of time to get them set up and lined up to make sure that we can have the amount of people there to get your birds processed in a timely fashion.
Do you have a minimum?
Yes and no. We have gone to a couple of local farms and just did 10 chickens. It wasn't worth our time, but we want to provide, again, a local service to people out there who don't know their options for processing. So again, the people who have the lower numbers of chickens, we highly encourage them to learn how to do the processing themselves.
So could you walk me through the process of what happens when you show up?
So when we get to your farm, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk around and see where we want to set up. A lot of times, I kind of have in mind how we do want to set up when we get there. There's an order to our steps on how they need to go. So Mary will set up her kill station closest to the pen. That way there is less movement for the chickens, so they're not as stressed out. So we'll take them and we will put them in the kill cones. We do use the kill cones because they do reduce the stress, and we're able to collect the blood to use for recycling purposes. So after that, they go into the scolder. We simply use a turkey fryer right now just because it's convenient for us. We use our Ford Escape to move all of our equipment, so having stuff that's easy to pack up and light works best for us right now. So after they go through the scolding station, they go into our plucker. From the plucker, they go to the gutting station, and from there they go into a four-stage cooling process. They initially go into a bucket of cool water, where that gets off most of the blood that's left over. And then they will go into 3 more ice buckets to get their temperature down. So one of the things that we do struggle with in the summer and high heat times is getting the chickens down to the temperature that we want. We want to get them down to about 30 to 40 degrees before we package them. Sometimes that doesn't always happen because of the temperatures that we do work with outside. So that is one of the biggest struggles that we have, and that is something that we do talk to the customers about beforehand. So if we know it's going to be a hot day, we will show up about anywhere between 6 and 7 a.m. to see if we can beat the heat of the day. And then after they have cooled down, we've got them in the bags. We have the customers take them straight into the house to put them in the freezer. The customers who have a large amount of chickens, so talking about 30, 40, 50 chickens on site that we're going to process for them, what we do is we have them buy some extra ice, and we have them ice those chickens in their bathtub to get the temperature down a little bit more before they throw them in the freezer. Because another thing that a lot of our customers don't understand is you can't take birds from processing straight into the freezer without having them at the right temperature. If you stack raw meat on top of itself, it's going to rot in the freezer if you don't have that cool air going around it to get the whole chicken cooled at the same time.
Is there a maximum weight that chickens can be at?
Yeah, I jumped into that one a little bit earlier with the prices. But we do want the chickens to be around 7 pounds, just to help the processing go smoothly.
Do you process laying hens?
Reluctantly, yes, we do. Laying hens are very greasy, and there's not a lot of meat to them. So what they used to refer to laying hens as was stew hens, because they make the best stock for your chicken noodle soup. So we do laying hens. We're not a huge fan of them, just because it's not a lot of, you're not getting your money for them really, but we do process them for the people out there who need to get rid of them.
So, say I've got ducks and turkeys. You do those too?
I had to learn this the hard way. We have processed a couple of ducks, and I can honestly say that we probably will never do ducks again. They are messy, and it is very hard to get through all the down. We've done a couple of turkeys. We're not set up for turkeys as far as our killing goes. Our kill station isn't set up for that. In the future, I would like to say that we'd be able to handle turkeys, but at this time, it's not something that we're able to do.
As far as processing the chickens, is there a difference in the breeds?
So this is a question that we get a lot. A lot of the places where currently and in the past our customers have gotten their chickens from has been Tyson's and Tractor Supply. And a lot of times they just carry the Cornish cross. So there's not too much of a difference in the processing end of it. It's just going to be in the flavor of the meat, and that just comes from some research that the customers want to do and what they're looking for in their meat. And they grow at different rates as well. Your Cornish cross, they're going to finish out in about 8 weeks, and your Rangers are going to grow out in about 12. So it just depends on how much money they want to put into feeding them and how much time they have to grow them.
So we've already covered the last 2 questions on that. So suppose you could probably jump into the Q&A on that, unless Steve has anything for us.
No, there's been a lot of activity in the chat box with a lot more questions for you two to go over, and I can help with that if you want. But looking at these last two bullet points on this slide, that reminded me that the first question in the box was from Wendy, and when you said that that you're not allowed to take the blood, guts, and feathers off-site with you, and that you recommend people compost them or use them for planting the blood with new trees, is that do people need to provide their own receptacles for that then, or do you kind of contain that and then let them do something with it and you take your bucket with you, or how does that process work of leaving it there?
So in Mary Station, we actually have our own, we did our own custom kill station. So we just took a 50-gallon plastic drum and we cut the top of it off and we made a steel ring to hang our kill cones from. So that's it. That's how we capture our blood. So once we're done butchering all the chickens, Mary will take that and dump it wherever they would like. If they don't particularly have a spot where they want that blood to be dumped, we just kind of scatter it throughout the yard away from the house to keep the flies away. But as far as the guts and the feet and everything go, if they don't have a place to compost it, we typically just leave it in a bucket with them, and it's up to them to dispose of that. The reason that we can't take that is we would have to have a place for us to dump the waste, and that's another fee that we're not able to afford at this time, and that's
Yep, makes sense. That's understandable. Um, So not surprisingly, Amber, when you went over that, the bullet point that said that the chickens that you process are not for resale, there were a flurry of questions about that. And so I guess maybe we can just bring Travis into this. And Travis, for example, how many birds are you planning to raise this year? And then what are you going to do with them? Because one of the points in the chat box that Greg made was that you said you wanted to add chickens to raise your bottom line, so clearly you'll sell them somehow. Could you guys explain how that process might work so you
Correct.
get around that?
Luckily, the processor in this case is my sister, and she lives right down the road from me. So, like I also said, this was a joint venture. She is going to be a co-owner in these chickens. I'm more or less raising them, and she's butchering them. We are selling them together. And that scenario is perfectly fine for the resale. The issue with the traveling part of it is she doesn't own the chickens, um, and I guess that's just kind of how the law works on that. So I am this year planning on hopefully selling around 600. Uh, they're all pre-orders, so I'm just looking to hopefully get 600 sold. Otherwise, I'm going to have a really full freezer.
Yeah, so that's one thought that I had heard before is um, that yeah, maybe the birds are sold as live birds before they're processed. Is that one way that one of your customers, Amber, might be able to get around this? Is if they pre-sell these birds as live birds and then you come and process them, and then the owners can come and pick up their chicken already processed.
so that's one of the things. That's a very fine line with the state inspector. So when I talked to them again before we started, that was one of the questions that I had with him. Um, and it's not something that they're willing to let us do. So since Travis and I are essentially co-owning these pre-orders, that's why we're able to do it the way that we're doing it. But when we go to certain sites for customers, they can only use those for farm use only as of right now. Um, we have looked into getting licensed, but the state is very reluctant to do that because they are telling us that they don't have the manpower to send an inspector with a mobile unit, which is understandable. Um, it just kind of it hinders our ability to really get some of the customers that we want to reach out to.
Okay, yeah. And somebody asked if you were aware of what's called the small enterprise exemption. Is that anything that you've looked into?
That's not something that we've looked at yet, no.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it either. Maybe Greg Lipes, who asked the question, can explain that or pass a link on for some of us to do some more research later.
Yeah, Greg, if you could get that link, that would be great.
So then another question here was, so Amber, you had mentioned that you charge $1 per pound once the bird is larger than 7 pounds, I think you said. And the question was, is that live weight or is that after processed weight?
That's the dressed weight.
Okay.
So typically you can figure in about 3 pounds or a, a third of the live weight, excuse me, for feathers, guts, and their feet. So that's one thing that we ask people ahead of time to do too is to weigh a couple of chickens to give us an average weight. That way we kind of know what we're getting ourselves into before we show up as well.
Yep, yep. Um, let's see. I know there are more questions in here. I, I Amber, I heard you say that one thing that is important to you is that you want the birds to look nice when you're finished with them, when you're finished processing. What is it? Do you do any packaging for these? And do you have to put like a label on this at all, even though it's not for resale? Is there, uh, what does it actually look like when you finish and pass it off?
So what we use are shrink bags. Um, I can't remember the specs on them right now, but um, after they're cleaned up and Mary and I do a final inspection for um, make sure the crops and tracheas and whatnot are pulled out and all of our fun little pin feathers are gone, then we go ahead and throw them in our freezer bags. So they're just shrink bags that once we are done with them, we can dip them in 200-degree water and it seals them up real nice. Um, but there is no label since they are not for resale. We do not have to put any labels on them.
Okay. Um, Sorry, I hate to jump around so much here, but I'm trying to go through these questions and uh, going back to the not for resale issue, and then you also mentioned that you pretty much only process what you and Mary can handle in a day unless you can get some help. Is there any way that maybe the your customer could help process them? Is that first of all legal, or are you okay with, maybe you can get more done if that person's willing to help out through the whole process through the day? And then also, do you have any idea if that um, has any implications on whether it's available for resale again? Like, there was another question related to this about if someone processed birds on their own farm without hiring you, does that also mean that those are not for resale? So related to them helping you or doing it on their own, do you know anything about that?
So if a customer wants to help us process to kind of help the day go by a little bit faster, we're all for that. The issue with the resale is once you hire someone to come to your place and process your birds for you, that is when they are not for resale. So if you process your own chickens on your own farm, you can sell them to whomever you want. They have to be pre-sold. You have to sell a live animal. So if you go ahead and process and you're trying to sell the carcass, that's when you're going to run into issues with the way that the state law is set up. The
Gotcha.
FDA.
Okay. But you would take help from your customer if they're willing to go through that process with you?
Yep.
Cool. Another question then was, I saw that you had a mileage rate. Is there a radius that you're not willing to travel past that you've found yet? Or are you, I know you're in Norway, Iowa, kind of Kelowna area. Are you willing to go, into the corners of the state or not so much yet?
Uh, it's got to be worth our time. It depends on how many chickens we're coming for. I think the furthest we've gone round trip, probably about 150 miles round trip so far. Um, it's a big cost up front for the customer. Um, One of the first people that we processed for, we probably drove we probably drove an hour and a half to get to them. And when it came down to it, we actually ended up saving them money because they would have had to have made 4 round trips just to get their chickens dropped off. So it's more time for us. And honestly, if we're going to have to go further for chickens, we would have to reevaluate to make sure it's going to be worth our time, depending on the distance and how many chickens they have. But we're not opposed to taking a full day or a full weekend to get somewhere.
Cool, good. We still got plenty of time. If anybody has more questions, go ahead and pop them in there. I think we're getting about caught up with the questions that were asked uh, while Travis and Amber were speaking. There was a question here from Carl that says, "Do you do dead bird composting for normal mortality?" And I know you guys don't do the composting, so I'm not quite sure what he means unless that makes sense to you, Amber.
No, that's not something that we do.
Okay.
So just as a thought for some of the people on here, asking about the resale portion of it, for people that do want to raise chickens and sell them for a profit, I guess my take on it would behoove you to hire these two to come and show you how to properly process them, quickly and easily, and get a presentable product, so you do have happy customers.
Yep, that's a great idea. I liked the emphasis that Amber and Mary put on the education while they're there and willingness to let people participate and learn. So that's a great idea. Looks like Kathy Rose said that she's happy to help you out this summer if
I
you
just saw
gals need any help. And Greg said he was looking up the link for the small enterprise exemption and doesn't I don't think he can get it now, but if he gets it, he'll give it to me and I can distribute it to anybody who wants to contact me. My email's in the chat box there. So any other, yeah?
We just lost connection for a minute.
Oh, okay, yeah, I thought it sounded like you cut out. Um, Looks like Jake just asked a question here. Is there an opportunity for you to rent your equipment as a way to ease the startup cost for producers?
So, and really, the only equipment that we really have is the plucker, um, and that is something that Mary and I have talked about is letting people use it. Um, so, so we would be happy to let people use the plucker as long as we could go through kind of a tutorial with them how to use it real quick. Um, but as far as that, we've made it really simple. As far as the rest of our equipment goes, I mean, making our own stand for the kill station and the tables and whatnot. It's some pretty basic stuff that we use. And Kate, we did buy our plucker. It's actually on its third motor. We've had it for quite a long time. My twin brother actually used it probably 10 or 15 years ago, so it's been around the block a little bit. And the neighbors, whoever you are, you can keep the feathers if you are if that's something that you want to do to make some pillows, but you're gonna have to get those. They're gonna have to get cleaned up pretty well.
Yeah, great questions. Keep them coming. Looks like Greg emailed me a PDF of the document, so I'm in the process of putting that on our website, and I'll put a link in the chat box here in just a moment. Uh, but Wendy has a question here. She says a processor that used to travel and is now retired from it bought a cold water tank. Oh, that was a question that we missed. Yeah, so when you mentioned that you recommend people maybe use a bathtub as a cold water tank, she asked if it was feasible for you to get, have you thought about getting a cold water tank? So then the question is, bought a cold water tank and a stainless steel table for processing birds on farm, and Wendy supplied the water from a hydrant, and so the water was very cold in the middle of the summer. Is this something you might consider purchasing instead of having producers use bathtubs to bring temps down? Have you looked at anything like that, Amber?
So my brother did remodel the milking parlor from the dairy farm. So we actually do have a stainless steel tank that we have used in the past. Um, like I said before, Mary and I use our Ford Escape to travel from site to site. So one of the things that we had to make sure is that we could pack everything in a decent fashion, um, in a small space. So we did we did use the tank. One of the things that we kind of ran into was, um, if you've got 40 chickens on hand, we want to make sure that we can keep moving through the process. So when we're able to have the customers use, say, their bathtub to finish the cooling process before they go into the freezer, it lets us get cleaned up and get out of there, essentially. So it's saving us time, so we can kind of have the rest of the day to ourselves to get everything cleaned up as far as our equipment goes and get back on the road. So and that's how we kind of cut costs on that as well, by using the Escape. If we had the equipment that I would love to have, we would have to have a small trailer set up to take those with us. So it's just a way that we're able to keep costs down.
Yep, and then on the same lines of the cold water bath, Ryan was asking about what you use for a scalder.
We just have a deep fryer basically, um, to boil water in. We've got one of the older stands that don't have that timer on there, so we're able just to hook up to a small little LP that we take with us, and we just heat the water up to 149 degrees and go from there.
Okay, and then similarly, you mentioned there's the shrink wrapping that you do with the birds, and you said you put that in hot water too. Is that the same uh, receptacle?
Yeah, we take along two different pans with us. One for the initial scald, um, and then one for the shrinking process. And
Yep.
Greg, I,
Um,
I agree with you, Greg, on that. If we were able to get licensed to be a mobile unit, we would definitely have a lot of people that we would be able to service, definitely.
there's been a few helpful links put in the chat box too about this stuff. Gil Gillespie said, it appears, but it's not totally clear, that in Iowa, producers can sell up to 1,000 birds to household only, and that's a link to that Iowa Agriculture website,
Yep.
which is that's why you keep yours at 99 then, or 999.
Yep.
Yep. And I just now got so Greg Leip sent his is Iowa Poultry Slaughter Processing and Sales Guidelines for Small Scale Producers link to me, and or his PDF to me, and it looks like I should be able to put that in the chat box here so anybody can look at that. Thanks, Greg, for sending that. Amber, are you familiar at all with the rules and regulations in other states outside of Iowa?
I know Minnesota and Wisconsin are pretty lenient. The further up north that you get, we actually have a couple of buddies up there. They have a butcher bus that you can actually rent out that has all the processing equipment that you need on it. So basically, you just go pick up the bus, process your chickens, and then take it back. So that was something that we were really hoping that Iowa would be open to, but unfortunately, that's not something that they're willing to do at this time. But outside of that, I'm not familiar with too many of the other laws.
That is really neat. So then the bus would essentially be up for rental, all the equipment included. It wouldn't be a crew that you hire, it would be the bus that you rent.
Yep.
Wow, awesome.
Say, Kathy Rose, I think you and I need to have a further conversation here after this.
Yeah. Yep, that's right. Kathy put her email in the chat box up at the beginning if anybody wants to reach out. Looks like a couple other people are chatting or typing in the chat box, but we do have more time for questions if there's other stuff to ask Amber and Travis.
Neighbors out custom graze anything.
Uh-oh, now you got him thinking, Travis. Anything?
Yeah, just stop by and we'll have a conversation.
Well, I am popping this link onto the screen here for our Farminar survey. You can give a little feedback about tonight, but also um, that survey asks for topics that you want to hear us focus on in the future. So we really do take that feedback seriously. If you've got any specific topics that you want to suggest PFI does a Farminar on, take that survey and you'll be entered to win some PFI gear, a hat or a shirt or something. Looks like the chat box is slowing down with questions. Last chance for picking the brain of the Schultes here. I will say, since we're on the topic of poultry processing, I did mention that our annual conference, our Practical Farmers of Iowa annual conference, is this weekend. It's Friday and Saturday, but prior to the conference, we have what we call short courses, which start on Thursday. They go all Thursday afternoon and then all Friday morning. So it's a real intensive course. And one of the short courses that we're doing for our conference this year, starting Thursday, is called Scaling Up Pastured Poultry. And that's with the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association. And they're going to cover pastured poultry production from chick to plate that help you create a profitable pastured poultry business. So anybody that wants to learn more about pastured poultry production, definitely come to our short course that starts on Thursday. There's more information at practicalfarmers.org if you want to look into that.
I will be going to those short courses on Thursday and Friday. So if there's anything somebody thinks of over the weekend and you are going to be at the PFI conference, look me up. Red beard, gray hair.
All right. Yeah, will you be at that pastured poultry short course then, Travis?
I will be Thursday, Friday, and I'll be there again Saturday.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think maybe this is a time to wrap up then. It looks like our questions have kind of slowed down, and so we can, yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks to Amber and Mary Schulte, and then also Travis Schulte for taking the time to prep for this and then to sit here and get bombarded with questions for an hour. Everybody that shared their email addresses is a great thing to hang on to if you want to contact anyone else. And hopefully we see some of you at the conference this weekend.
Wendy, on that last comment that you had there, that's not something that we're able to clarify. The best source I can tell you to do is just to call the extension office. They are very easy to get a hold of, and they will walk through with you the rules and regulations for your specific questions.
Yep, good tip, Amber.